Welcome back. It's great to be with you here on this very brisk morning here in Rome. It's a sunny day, and yet the wind is blowing, and we also have a cool morning. I think fall is in the air, and I imagine things are getting chillier back in Chicago as well. Today is a very important day in the life of the church. It's the feast day of St. Pope John Paul II. It was 37 years ago today that he was installed as the successor of Peter. And in many ways, the Synod that we are gathered for in Rome during these 3 weeks is very much in tune with some of the priorities that he established in his own pontificate. He was very much involved in the Synod process, but also raised questions with regard to how the Petrine ministry or the Pope would exercise his ministry. He also called for, at the end of the Jubilee year of 2000, for the Church to look at ways in which we can reach out to people who are excluded. And he asked us in that document to put out into the deep. So a lot of the themes that St. Pope John Paul II introduced in the life of the Church are coming to fruition during this Synod. And I thought it was important to mark this date 37 years ago when he was installed, 6 days after his election. It's an important milestone in the life of the Church and something that we should celebrate today. We'll be back tomorrow for one last report and then heading home after a 3-week stay here in Rome for the Synod.
Here we are in the third week of the Synod. It's coming to its conclusion. And Archbishop Cupich spoke about Pope St. John Paul II. And I want to speak about the Pope as well, about the Petrine ministry, the ministry of Peter, entrusted to our Holy Father, Pope Francis. And why is this important in the context of the Synod? Because all of the Synod work and the documents that will be generated from this Synod will go to our Holy Father, who will take them under consideration and then give us some direction in the Church. Now, there are 3 particular passages in Scripture that help us to understand the role of Peter and his successor, the Pope, in the Catholic Church. The first is from Matthew's Gospel. Jesus says to Peter, "You are Peter, you are a rock, and on this rock I will build my church." And so the ministry of Peter, of the Pope, is to be a faithful point of reference for our faith. We have a reliable point of reference to stay faithful to what Jesus wants of us. And the second passage is taken from St. Luke's Gospel. At the Last Supper, Jesus says to Peter, "Confirm your brothers and sisters. Confirm them, strengthen them, encourage them." And a second aspect of the ministry of Peter lived out in our Holy Father, Pope Francis, is to confirm his brothers and sisters in the Church, to encourage them to take up the mission of Jesus and bring that to the world. And sometimes that involves stretching a bit and finding new paths, and that's what the Synod has been about. And the third passage is from John's Gospel. After the resurrection, Jesus says to Peter, "Feed my sheep, take care of the flock that I entrust to you." And he is calling Peter to sustain the unity of the Church, to make sure that this Church, this community of faith, holds together. When you see in its entirety the ministry of Peter, you can begin to understand and recognize how important that is for us. It's not just a symbol, but it is a living presence that helps us to remain faithful and encouraged in mission, and then unified in our faith and action. And for this gift of the ministry of Peter, and for the gift of Pope Francis, we are deeply grateful, and we thank God.